J. Cole, ever since his kind of bowing out, so to say, from the beef, the drama, the back and forth between Kendrick Lamar and Drake, as he so gracefully, not so gracefully, disgracefully, bowed out 24 hours after he dropped his own diss track. He's been relatively quiet this year, but he has come out recently in recent podcasts and kind of been talking openly about things that have happened early on in his career. And one of those things that he had discussed is Jay-Z and his working relationship with him, and how Jay-Z wanted, for example, Drake to write a hit for him. So we're going to be discussing that because we never really got a chance to talk about it, but this happened maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, and I wanted to go back and touch on that. So without further ado, let's just get right into that.
Just quick reactions or whatever is going to be J. Cole basically saying that there's a J. Cole, Jay-Z, and Drake situation or topic where J. Cole, if you guys don't know, he does a podcast, or not a podcast, but like, I guess it is a podcast. He basically said that through that, wait, is it available? Where the fuck is it? So essentially, let me find it on Twitter. I know Twitter's gonna have it. Essentially, he said that Jay-Z told him, yo, go get a hit song from Drake because you need a hit, right?
So early on in J. Cole's career, a big topic of discussion, especially when it was kind of around, what was his first album? What was J. Cole's first album? What was the name of that? It was, Cold World. Okay. So Cold World came out 2011. This is his first kind of big debut project after obviously like a lot of his mixtapes had a lot of success and had people buzzing and really kind of like considering him to be one of the next ups around the time of like the warm up, the come up, Friday Night Lights, all that, which kind of like built up to this moment that people have been waiting for. But a big topic of discussion is, can he have a hit? Does he have the ability to make a hit song? One that will cross over, that'll be mainstream, that everybody and their moms will be able to listen to and instantly kind of gravitate towards, not just to the strictly hip hop heads that liked him because he was lyrical, introspective, and like had depth to his music. That was a big kind of topic of discussion at the time because he didn't really have one. Like he had a few songs that definitely had a lot of buzz and did get some play on the radio, but they weren't like massive hits that crossed over and like what you would kind of expect for somebody to elevate to the next level of like a superstar. It didn't really seem to be kind of in his bag, and a lot of people were very concerned and worried about his ability to rise to the occasion, to take things to the next level. And at that time, Drake was also kind of buzzing. He had just come out a couple years ago. He had some hits. He was showing a lot of like momentum. Like he was becoming the Drake that we know today. And J. Cole and Drake had a good relationship. They had a great relationship, as a matter of fact. So it wasn't a surprise. It's not really a surprise to me that Jay-Z would like kind of point at him and be like, can you help him make a hit? Because Drake was turning into the hit machine that we know to be.
Jay-Z, Drake, J. Cole, which, I think this is more of a J. Cole thing than it is a Drake thing, because it shows that J. Cole, who was seen as by many people the prodigy of Jay-Z, and I mean, he pretty much rapped about trying to get the approval of Jay-Z and wanted acceptance of Jay-Z, just like many other people. Like, for example, Kanye West, even down to the whole song Big Brother was him basically kind of courting the acceptance of Jay-Z. And you got to understand why that was very important. Essentially, there was some hiccups and there was some rocky times. And apparently, according to, I believe, J. Cole himself, right? Apparently, according to J. Cole himself, he said that, the headline, it says, J. Cole says Jay-Z asked Drake to give him a hit record. I don't know if we could find the exact clip where he says it, but we all know the history of them. And you got to imagine, if you sign me and you're my big homie, Drake looks up to you type shit, why the fuck would you make me, like, that was a belittling move if you ask me.
And if you weren't around like hip hop at the time, you didn't really understand. Like at that time, before streaming, before like all these other new developments of technologies and like the way that the kind of musical landscape is shaped nowadays, back then, if you did not have a hit, you did not have a hit song, you were just going to fail. That was it, point blank, because labels were not going to continue to put money behind you to press CDs, to do promo runs, to put you on features. Like they weren't going to spend the money to continue to push your career if you could not produce a hit for them that would bring them money. That was basically the essence of what you needed to do back then to be a successful rapper. Times have obviously changed. You could be a successful artist and rapper without even like a smash hit. You can have your own following. You can get your own niche. You can get your own streaming. Look at artists like Russ and Larry June and whatnot. But back then, that was not an option, because if you wanted to be a significant star and player in the music scene, especially hip hop, you needed a hit song. If labels were going to put money behind you, you needed a hit song. And that's why there was so much pressure back in the day for artists to kind of cross over and do certain songs that they might not have wanted to do personally, but labels and people behind them were telling them, this is going to be hit, you need to do this. And that is a lot of place that like people from his generation were facing. And he was facing this extremely heavy at the time, because obviously signing to Jay-Z, who had hits, who had number one songs, expectations were through the roof. And people weren't sure at the time if he was going to be able to live up to them, myself included. I mean, this is, if you want to Rob Martin, I'm going to Rob Martin's actual video. Let me pay him the credit.
Hey, yo, what up, what up, what up? This is not a podcast. It's just my thought. I press record on the camera. I come sit. I do the sync. J. Cole, this audio series, says it's not a podcast. They call it an audio series. And I respect them, because I know how that feels when I say this is not a podcast. It's just my thoughts. And the same way I like for y'all to respect me. You know what I'm saying? I respect Cole. He says it's an audio series. So if you're a J. Cole fan, you definitely have to be listening to this. It's called The Inevitable. It's with him and his manager, Ibrahim, and Scott Laser. It's $10 for 10 episodes, so it does come at a price. Each episode has been at
$10 per episode. Kind of crazy. Like, I don't know how long those episodes are, but $10 an episode is crazy. Those used to be the prices of CDs. And the fact that he's saying this is not a podcast, you need to pay $10 to listen to every single release, is crazy. Let me see how many releases he's got. So for the J. Cole Not Podcast Inevitable series, audio series, he released a schedule. Let me see what it is. So yeah, he's doing like I think they're all out. Yeah, they're all out right now. 10 episode series, $10 a pop is crazy. So yeah, if you want to spend $100, you can listen to a 10 episode series from J. Cole, obviously from the Come Up mixtape to all of the kind of follow-up projects, all the way to 2014 Forest Hills Drives, which a lot of people consider to be his best album, which, you know, I could argue it is probably his best album to date. But like, yeah. So for $100, you can hear J. Cole talk about everything that's happened in his career to this point, which is very cool. But it is also why I've not seen audio versions of any things that have been discussed, because I don't know too many people that are going to pay that per episode.
At least about an hour and a half long, so they're pretty long and extensive. If you're a Cole fan, you definitely have to be listening and checking this out. If you're just like a rap fan and not into Cole, but just, you know, you love hip hop, I still think it's dope and I still recommend it. If you're an aspiring artist, there are a ton of jewels in here. You know, the whole thing is them talking about the come up, the journey, the steps that they took for Cole to get where he was at, and the different positions that everybody played, and the relationships that were formed. The first episode is called The Come Up. Then the second episode is Lights Please. They talk about J. Cole just growing Hills Drive one night only. A while back when he made the thing, like, I just think that's disrespectful. I wouldn't like if somebody did that to me. So we're gonna respect it. But and plus, having listened or who on Night Lights, but not his level, but still not to the point where the label is like, all right, we can release an album. So he's on Rock Nation, and so the label, and specifically the label head, Jay-Z, is pressuring him to make a hit record. Like, you need a hit record, you need a first single so that they can start Thursday Night Lights, just to keep or the warm-up. Those of y'all who haven't listened or who aren't listening. But basically, where we are in this story, Cole dropped the warm-up mixtape and he dropped Friday Night Lights, but not his debut album. He had got signed before the warm-up mixtape came out, and Still, the debut album wasn't ready, so he dropped Friday Night Lights just to keep the buzz going. And Friday Night Lights, a classic, just like really took Cole to another level, but still not to the point where the label was like, all right, we can release an album. So he's on Rock Nation, and so the label, and specifically the label head, Jay-Z, is pressuring him to make a hit record.
Like I said, like he had a lot of tapes that a lot of people loved, that a lot of people had buzz for, that people were like really like kind of like feeling, especially like hip hop fans. But he didn't have that one song outside of maybe like Lights Please. Lights Please was an absolute smash, but it wasn't a crossover smash. It was a hip hop, urban, R&B kind of hit song for people that were in the know, but it wasn't like a chart breaking, here's my moment type of single. So this is why people were like really pressuring him to put one out, because at that time, if you did not have a single, once again, labels thought you were basically worthless. Like you didn't have value to them if you were not able to create a hit in some way, shape, or form. That's why every single album from back in those days, no matter how tough, how gangster, how underground of a rap they are, if they were signed to a label, they had that one or two songs that were clearly aimed at being singles and like pushing a certain sound and reaching a certain demographic out there, typically the women. But no matter what, they needed it. Even if it didn't fit them, they had it. And that was kind of the time period that he was arriving in.
Like you need a hit record, you need a first single so that they can start the rollout of the album. But at this point, Cole has Can't Get Enough with Trey Songz, which was a single off the album, but it wasn't the first single. But to Jay, like it feels like a single, but probably not the one, right? And probably not the lead off single. So the other picture to paint is the pressure that Cole feels amongst his peers. Wiz Khalifa caught a hit with Black and Yellow, and Rolling Papers is coming out. Big Sean caught a hit with My Last, and Finally Famous hit. And even though Interscope fumbled the rollout with Wale's debut, Wale dropped his debut and was able to get his first album out. And Wale,
think about that. That was an absolutely killer time for him to have to come out as well. Because even though he is like a new artist on the come up at that time, the list and the names of artists that were also coming out around that same time was very extensive. So the landscape of hip hop was extremely, extremely competitive. You had Big Sean, you had Wiz Khalifa, you had Wale, you had Meek Mill, you had Kendrick Lamar and the whole TDE crew. Like you had like a lot of artists that are pretty much legacy acts at this point, like mainstays who've had long careers. That was kind of the time period he was kind of coming up in. It was kind of a transition time where it was like Jay-Z, Nas, like all those other artists were kind of like slowly fading out and going kind of like starting to play the background, and we were wondering which one of these artists was going to be the next one to kind of carry the torch. And I also forgot to mention Drake. So like that time period he was coming out with was absolutely crazy. So 1000% his label was looking for him to have a hit comparable to somebody like those artists that could compete, that they could kind of put out on Front Street and be like, those guys are nice, but he's the nicest. He's our label representative for the next generation and on. But we'll keep going.
Is getting his career started, and then there's Drake, who is just like killing shit across the board. Cole admits that he felt the competition with Drake even back then, which is interesting, but I think we all kind of knew this, especially if you were around them. But Cole admits that he felt the competition with Drake, even though they were friends. So this is around 2010, 2011. Cole talks about it in terms of commercial success. Drake was killing it. He was in a league of his own. That's not where the competition was. In terms of the cultural conversation, there was a bit of a competition in terms of who will be the future of hip hop. It was definitely a debate among like fans who are on the blogs or just people in the know. I don't know that mainstream knew about Cole as much, but amongst heads, those, if you know, those guys, the journalists of the world, just the deep hip hop fans on the blogs, maybe in some of the barbershops, there was this debate about who is the future of hip hop.
Literally what I just said. Everybody was kind of wondering who is the future of hip hop. Obviously Drake is blowing up. He's having massive success. He's got Lil Wayne. You got Nicki and Minaj out at that time. Like that time period was pretty goddamn insane for the amount of artists that there were that were like starting to put their stamp on their career and like make their way in position in the game. So there wasn't like a lot of positions in the game. Back then, things were still extremely competitive between artists. They might have been cordial, they might have worked together, but they still wanted to be number one, which was, you know, something that seems to be missing in today's hip hop. But back then, like, again, competing with Kendrick, competing with Drake, competing with Wale, competing with Meek Mill, like he's just competing with these artists, and like he's trying to find his own mark because you can clearly and easily get overlooked. Look at how Wale turned out. Even though he had his run, he had some hits, he had some success, it kind of quickly faded away. And like, he did not want to kind of fall into that category of like what ifs. But like Kendrick Lamar also had like what Swimming Pools come out in 2012. So somewhere around maybe like a year after that album. So like he had a smash hit. So like there's like a lot of things that are like going on that are putting a lot of pressure on him, not just from his label. So like I can definitely see why somebody like Jay-Z was feeling a little iffy, like feeling a little nervous, a little anxious. Like we need that one.
Drake or this guy that Jay-Z just signed named J. Cole. Anyway, Cole knows he isn't going to be able to put this album out until he gets a hit, and Jay is definitely pressuring him. He talks a lot about his relationship with Jay-Z and even his frustration with Jay at the time and with the pressure that Jay was putting on him. And they're throwing Cole in with producers that don't even make sense, like pop producers, and just to try to manufacture this hit. And then, you know, there's a scene where Jay even tells Cole that he doesn't think he can find a hit on his own, and asks Cole, like, why is he so hell-bent on producing his own stuff?
That is crazy. That is crazy for your like label head, the guy that signed you, the guy that believed in you enough to sign you and bring you to a contract to kind of make you be his first signee as like Roc Nation. Post Rockefeller, this is Jay-Z's label. This is Jay-Z's, you know, big follow up to what Rockefeller was. And like on his own, post Dame Dash, post everything, like my first signing is you. I believe in you enough to put you out first, to put the belief in you, to like have you carry this label basically as the first artist. And then for him to turn around, like not even like what, a year or two later, and be like, I don't think you can make your own hit. I just don't believe it. I don't see it. Everything I've heard from you is not a hit. Why do you want to produce your own things? Like that is kind of a crazy thing. And like, I could definitely feel why you'd kind of feel some type of way, because I can definitely be so crushing and like very disheartening to say the least. But that also says a lot about J. Cole, that he didn't let that kind of like end his run or end his career, because a lot less people who are a lot less confident and secure in who they are as an artist and their music might have folded in that situation.
Like, you need help. Why do you want to do this all yourself? So it's a real contentious time. It's a tough time for Cole. And all of this, you know, you also have to understand that this whole podcast, all of these words are in Cole's recollection and Ebe's recollection. Maybe Jay has a different perspective. Right now, we're just going off of what Cole is telling us and his
like, I mean, he might have been that blunt with them, but also Jay might have like maybe not have worded it that way. But you know how like it doesn't really matter. Like perception is reality, and that is how J. Cole might have perceived the way he was saying it. It doesn't really matter. So like I don't know if that's exactly how Jay would have worded that to him, but like, damn, shit is blunt, bro. Like I don't think you could make a hit.
recollection and how he felt. All right, so boom. As the story goes, Cole and Ebe were in LA during All-Star Weekend,
which is also ironic because Jay-Z hopped on the song Was a Mr. Nice Watch as one of his, I don't know if that was the lead single. It was definitely one of the lead singles from Cole World, and that shit was a dud. That shit absolutely flopped. People saw it featuring Jay-Z and thought, oh, this must be an absolute banger. And then when we heard it, nah. Nah. Mr. Nice Watch is a dud. It's whack. It's one of the worst Jay-Z features that I could think of. Like if I was to name like some of my least favorite Jay-Z features, that'd be definitely near the top. And I'm one that I believe J. Cole himself would admit did not turn out well, did not how he would want a Jay-Z verse to kind of come out or kind of be used. Like it's one of those that never gets played on stage for good reason. But like the fact that Jay-Z is telling him that he can't make a hit and then he hops on Mr. Nice Watch is also showing like maybe his age was also a little bit telling, like maybe you couldn't tell a hit anymore either.
working on music, and they attend Jay and LeBron's Two Kings dinner that they used to do every year for All-Star Weekend. And everyone is in there. It's pretty star-studded. So Cole and Eve are there, and they're talking with Drake and Drake's manager, Future the Prince. I'm just going to, I had transcribed some of what Eve said, so I'll read it out because Eve really sets the story up, because within this audio series, Cole forgot until Eve brought it up. But here's what Eve says. Eve says, at this point now, we're really close with Drake. Future's one of my closest homies that I done met through the game. Nico Chubbs.
I forgot. Future was also coming up at that time. 2 Chainz was popping up at that time. Like, that time period needs to be studied, because like that early 2010s period, you had artists across the board that had their own style, their own flow, their own delivery, their own kind of type of music, but they were all competing for the top spot. Like, music was hip hop was extremely active at that point and very competitive. And like, you don't always get that, but there's certain points in time where you get like this melding and meeting of talent and artists that just make that time period so special. And that is one of those that when we finally look back at the history of hip hop, that one is going to stand out, because it brought out a ton of stars, a ton of superstars, and a ton of very, very talented people who put out very good music, even like a Big Crit or like Yellow Wolf, like just a lot of artists out there at that time that were doing shit. And like, this is the time period that he had to come up and kind of figure out his own lane.
All of those guys. So they pull up and we're having a conversation. Me, Cole, Drake, Future. I don't know who else was there. A couple of more people. So then Jay walks in and he sees us all together and he goes, yo. And he looks at Drake and he says, yo, give the boy one, and points at Cole.
Bruh. Hey, bro, come on now, dog. Come on, man.
Yo, not in front of everybody, bro. Not in front of everybody. Like, I thought he told them two maybe privately behind the scenes when they're all together in the studio, but at a table with all of your peers, people that you were also competing with, all trying to like establish yourself in the game, and you point out one of them. My label guy points at somebody who's not signed to me, who's actually signed to a label that he's almost in competition with, and telling him, yo, give him a hit in front of my face. Nah, there might be some furniture movie, because that was disrespectful. That was disrespectful.
Basically, give him a hit. I even remember Future's face, like, that's embarrassing. All right. So this is
embarrassing, bro. Embarrassing. Like, Jay literally like heard all of J. Cole songs and then told everybody basically to their face at the table, told them this.
It's not a banger, my guy.
He ain't got no bangers. Help him out. Help me, please.
Eve's recollection of Jay, of them just chilling in the party, them talking, because, while there is a competition, they're friends at the heart of it all. But, Cole ain't come here to be second. He wants to be the man. He wants to be the guy. Drake has all the hits. Drake has all the light on him. So Drake currently has it, but Cole is willing to compete. I know all of the jokes that y'all gonna put in the comments. Again, we're talking about 2010, 2011. So this is Eve's recollection, and then Jay walks in, and because Drake was a hit machine, like he was on everybody's joint. It wasn't just the album, wasn't just So Far Gone. That feature run that Drake was on, 2009, 2010. You know what I'm saying? Like they were like Money to Blow, Say Something with Timbaland, Fab, Throw It in the Bag remix. I don't have the list in front of me, but I mean, he was on fire, man. Like he was on absolute fire. And so,
like I said, at that time, he was established. He had hits. He had smash albums. Like he was very clearly pointing to like he's next up. Like he has the ability. People were kind of wondering like, would it hit? Would it like resonate with people? Yes, absolutely yes. When Thank Me Later came out, Take Care came out around that same time, and I don't even know how many hits that one had. Like you said, the features he was on, all the singles he was on. Like my guy was doing what he would come to do for like the next 10 years, and like he really put his stamp on the game, and people looked at him like, yeah, he's different. Like he was a hit maker.
Jay walks in and says, "Yo, get a boy one," and you know, throw him a hit, like the same hits you getting for everybody else. Yo, get one for my guy, and also they had In the Morning already. In the Morning just wasn't a hit record. In the Morning was a dope record, but In the Morning wasn't.
In the Morning was a fire song, absolutely fire song. Kind of very like, you know, Lights Please, like it's fire. In the Morning was absolutely fire, but again, it wasn't crossover mainstream commercial fire. Ladies loved it. It was a crossover kind of almost R&B hit, but it wasn't like the one.
Necessarily hit. Definitely wasn't pushed to radio or anything like that. So Cole is embarrassed, you know, sounds like maybe Future the Prince and Drake are embarrassed for him. Eve is embarrassed. And then Cole jumps in and you know, this is his recollection. He says, again, he's just saying, mind you, there's a legit competition. Commercially, it's not, but culturally, it's still a competitive sport. Eve says, I felt embarrassed for Cole and I felt embarrassed for Drake and Future because they were like, they got to be like, what the fuck? That's a crazy story. I never heard that story before. You know, yeah, this podcast series is dope.
Absolutely nasty on Jay-Z's part. Like, I love Jay. You know, he's got his ways. He's definitely, you know, done certain people wrong. He's made his own enemies in the industry, but like, I don't know any artist who's ever reached the top that has not stepped on some heads on the way to that position. But like, that was dirty. That was nasty. That was disrespectful. That was something that to do in front of other artists that are also competing as peers and like on other labels, and to just point them out like that in front of everybody on Front Street was disrespectful. And there's a reason why 13 years later, it still stings. It still hurts. Like, from the sound of it, I didn't actually hear how he discussed it, but I promise you, the way he sounded his voice, you could probably tell the hurt, the disrespect already, like, just the feeling just rushed right back. Like, that is an embarrassing ass moment for somebody who's just coming up and trying to make their way in the game. And your guy who signed you, who believed in you when he believed in you enough to sign you, considered arguably the greatest rapper of all time, signed you, and to point at somebody else like a Drake and be like, give him a hit. Crazy. You know, if that would happen to Jay, he would feel the exact same way. So like, I would love to hear how kind of Jay-Z's perspective is about this whole thing. But like, I'm not going to pay $10 per episode to hear this, but I'm sure more tidbits will come out from like kind of like these podcast discussions. If you have heard this series, let me know what you kind of think about it and what, like, how good was the conversation, how revealing, like, is it worth the price of admission? But like, crazy story, absolutely disrespectful. And like, the fact that he was kind of this open and honest about it it's respect, because that doesn't put him in the best of lights, especially considering what happened this year when he kind of tapped out of that whole back and forth. And like, damn, son, disrespectful, bro, disrespectful.